there. I'm Diane, and as he said, I'm a bit shy. I reluctantly come to my activism. I'm a fourth-generation fisherwoman from Seadrift, Texas, and I've been fighting the chemical plants in my hometown for 17 years now, and I've been involved with the Bhopal struggle since 1991. And I like what Gary said about this thing about, well, the corporate rights and their profits, will they trump your communities and your family's health? And that's probably where I started, because my county in 1989 was the #1 county in the nation for toxic disposal. So we already had a #1 ranking, and we had one of the worst polluters ever that was coming in. They were building the biggest expansion in Texas history. And we are known in Texas for big chemical expansion. This is one of the biggest they had ever had. And matter of fact, the chemical plant that was coming down there, they were so notorious and so bad that they were kicked out of Taiwan, which was where they're from. It was Formosa Plastics, and they were totally kicked out. And so they came to the worst, two worst states in the nation for environmental consciousness, and it was Texas, Louisiana. And Texas, Louisiana had a real fight over who was going to get them, and we got them because we gave them $250 million in tax abatements. And my little community, it was so poor, the school district was so poor, they were eliminating 17 teachers, yet that little school district gave that chemical plant $100 million in tax abatement. And so that's where it comes down to, is what's going to trump? You know, and I'm fourth generation, and I grew up on that bay. You know, I always like to tell the tale is when I was 5 years old, I could go to that bay and I could see her. I mean, it was a woman. It really was. She was real. When you hear the Native Americans talk about, you know, their father, the sky, or this mountain with this persona, it's like, that's the truth. When you are still clear and understand the connection, it's real. And so I had a real thing about the bay. And when it came to where, does the corporations trump or win the other one, I was like, no. It's like, no, it's not going to happen. And the thing of it is when we're in a place, when you talk about these corporations, is, you know, and I imagine sitting here in this university, it's hard to see it, but when you're in a small southern fishing community where the chemical plants, they have all the power, the mayors have got contracts with the corporations, the county commissioners have contracts. Our senator that was endorsing their permits, I mean, he had security contracts with them. And you know, and the man that was getting all the credit for bringing them down, you know, like he had appointed, it was at that time, it was Phil Graham, who was a congressman, and he had appointed the EPA, the head of the EPA, and he was his campaign manager. So, you know, so that's what you're facing. I mean, when you can, you know, get rid of all this hazy stuff and get real down to the brass tacks, that's what really goes on. And it's not just the bays, they were killing the bays. We had the largest dolphin die-off. We had green algae, red algae, brown algae. I mean, it covered the bays. And the fish were just gasping and jumping out of the water trying to get away from it. And so that's when you try to fight that, and you've got the politicians, and you know, and where they don't want to even enforce any of the regulations, or when they won't even come out with any violations or slap fines against them. I know one of them, like Formosa, in one day, talk about Bhopal, and you know, wondering about if there's similar things. In one day, Formosa Plastics put out 148,000 pounds of vinyl chloride. You know, and vinyl chloride is such a bad chemical, you release 1 pound of it and you got to report it to the EPA. This was 148,000 pounds in one single day, and it was across the street from a schoolyard. And so it's like, what's going to trump? And it's like, and the thing of it is I think we as people, we forget what we're capable and what we can actually do. And so I started doing civil disobedience. I started, you know, and it wasn't because I read about it or I got instructions or I went to a classroom and they said, you know, this is the next thing online, if all this fails, this is what you do. It was like, you know, this was just common sense. It was like I run up against a brick wall, and it was either they get my whole community, they get our future. You know, I already had a son that's autistic from the mercury out there in those bays. You know, it's like, they're not going to get it no more. Just not going to get it. And so I have, over the years, I have did probably 8 hunger strikes. I know I did 3 against Formosa. And one of my last actions is to get them to recycle their waste stream is I took my shrimp boat out. I had a 42-foot shrimp boat, and I took that thing and I proceeded to sink it right on top of their discharge point. Because it wasn't illegal. It was totally illegal. EPA knew it, state knew it. It was like, yeah. But it's like, it was an outrage. It's kind of like this thing. It's an outrage. It's an outrage, and it's like, we get so much of an outrage, it just goes right over our heads. It just goes right over our heads. And it was like, and so that's the reason I sunk the boat, is because sometimes you really got to do something to get past that kind of film that people got over them, where they can let these crimes against humanity just go on and on and on. And so that's why I felt it took something as dramatic as sinking a shrimp boat. Because, you know, in Texas, and especially around a pack of shrimpers, you sink your boat. You know, it's like a farmer burning his farm. It was, they're like, you know, a boat, I mean, that's your livelihood, that's where you make a living. And it's like, yeah, but the bay is so much more valuable. It's so much more valuable. It's for not only ourselves, it's for itself, and it's for our future of our children. And sometimes, you know, I think it's really required that you have to make a statement. And so that's what, and matter of fact, that's the way I got 0 discharge from Formosa Plastics after I did that action, that drastic of an action, and I had, the corporation found out about it, so they said, you know, there's this crazy woman out there and she's trying to sink a boat, and so they called all the Coast Guard. And so I had 3 boatloads of Coast Guard out there in the middle of the bay. They were saying I was a terrorist on the high seas and, wanted in jail and penitentiary and all kinds of stuff like that. And the thing of it is, and this is the thing to remember, is you don't realize who you can impact. Because when I started to try to sink that boat, and I had all those Coast Guard out there trying to tow me in and pull me in and tie up the boat and confiscated it, is those shrimpers who had been up to this point they had been very depressed. Shrimpers, very, very depressed people. You know, they're losing their livelihoods. They can't sell their shrimp. They can't catch shrimp. You know, they have one algae right after another. And so they don't get involved because they don't believe anything is going to change. But when they saw me trying to sink the boat and all those Coast Guards, and what the corporation was doing, is those men, for the first time in their lives, they all got out in their boats, and I think there was a wild norther, this real unpredictable norther that had came through, so it was blowing about 40 knots of wind, and those men took their shrimp boats and they went out and did a demonstration, which is illegal. You know, it's illegal for a boat to get out there. Is like blockading the channel or something or other. And the end result is that, you know, talk about this brotherhood. You know, you think you're working in a vacuum when actually there's this brotherhood out there. And like I said, that's the way I got that corporation to start recycling its waste stream.